Made with Spoken. Taming the Perilous Skies by Phil Marshall.
We overestimate the day and underestimate the years, until a day is all that remains. Persistence. Noun. Definition 1. Persistence is Brian Medlock's theory of everything, stating that gravity and quantum physics are both caused by the same phenomenon. Particles, such as photons and electrons, exist as pathways or threads, spanning from their origin to their termination, and all particles that have ever or will ever exist in all of time are interwoven into a timeless, that is persistent, fabric. According to persistence, gravity is caused by a force differential created by the fabric wrapping more densely around masses such as planets and their moons, and less densely between them. This understanding led to Medlock's invention of anti-gravity, resulting in the revolutions that transformed society throughout much of the 21st century. The aerial revolution reduced greenhouse gases and reversed global climate change as the transportation, energy, and other industries embraced anti-gravity technology. This gave rise to the social revolution, in which open trade and travel dissolved geopolitical barriers, and to the spiritual revolution, in which the Catholic Church and other major world religions embraced the fabric as one and the same as God. Humanity stood at the threshold of an epoch of peace, prosperity, and shared purpose. Until the fall of 2076. Definition 2. Persistence is continuing with something despite difficulty or opposition. Chapter 1. Jack Woods. Monday, October 19, 2076. Washington, D.C., 8:24 a.m.
As I lay there with clods of earth thumping all around me, I thought of my son and of a sparrow. Thinking of the bird was unavoidable. The poor thing was on its side staring at me from only a few inches away, clearly as confused as I was by the strange turn of events. Sparrows often bathe themselves in dirt, which was a handy skill for this particular male to have. He opened his little black beak in a soundless chirp, fluttered free of the debris, and was off clean as a whistle. I sat up to find I had been thrown against the outer wall of a large concrete planter. Particles of dust rose and fell, while others seemed frozen in the sky, like as many grains in an ancient photo. I honestly couldn't tell if there was any color left in the world, until I looked down at my hand. There, glinting with the blue of his eyes, was Eric's marble.
7:03 a.m.
Tink, 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 tink. It was just a stupid marble, bouncing on our kitchen table, nothing more. I wouldn't take the bait. I wouldn't allow Eric to torment me, as only an audacious 9-year-old boy could do with a dime-sized ball of glass. Who cared if the marble fell off the table, unshielded from the full brutality of Earth's 9.8 meters per second squared of gravity, a fall that would have been entirely preventable. It had no connection whatsoever, to his first trip alone in an anti-gravity aerial vehicle. Tink. Eric caught the marble, then slipped his cereal bowl beneath the edge of the table. Flip. Swoosh. The muffled cabinet reverberated as it rinsed, dried, and finally clink. Restacked the bowl clean. We locked eyes, and our game was on. Why did the moon cross the earth? I asked, with a weighty seriousness.
To get to the other tide,
he said. Eric's ghost, nothing more than a ping-pong ball-sized anti-gravity orb shrouded in a Kleenex, darted between us. He leaned forward slightly.
What do female ghosts have that male ghosts don't?
Boobs, I replied spookily, willing my eyes not to blink. Tank. Stupid marble. There hadn't been a single aerial incident in years, despite 7.2 billion flights every day. In flying to the Oak Ridge National Laboratory for his science class? How cool's that? The milestone was inevitable, and I had held off longer than most parents. He would sit buckled into a single-passenger vehicle for less than an hour. Still, I hadn't gotten much sleep festering over it. Why do whales visit the Sea of Galilee?
For religious purposes,
he said, as his eyelids began to quiver under the strain. All of a sudden, which was usually the case with these things, I recalled that whales slept with half their brains at a time, using the other half for surfacing and breathing, and keeping their awake eye on their young. That made me wonder how whales cleared their ears, which made me wonder if they had eustachian tubes, which made me worry about Eric all over again. His eustachian tubes would get plugged at the aerial's altitude of 30 or 40,000 feet. The aerial would be pressurized, and Eric knew how to clear his ears. But even so, I thought it best to keep the aerial's automated trajectory as close to the 500-foot minimum as possible. The trip would take longer, but he'd be more comfortable. Eric raised his left hand over the table.
Why did Mars turn red?
Tink, 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 tink. He set the marble bouncing toward me in a final desperate attempt to distract. I thrust my hand under the table's edge and caught the marble without ever diverting my stare, then tucked it inside the cuff of my shirt. Because it saw Uranus. Eric busted out a laugh, then dropped his head in defeat. Uranus, I said, as I grabbed my Optalk glasses from the table and put them back on. You can never go wrong with Uranus.
Your 2076 Alfa Romeo Phantom will arrive in 10 minutes.
The awaiting notification on my lenses read. Then 10 turned to 9.
Now?
Eric asked, his hand hovering above the small black case on the table. I nodded, and the new gunmetal gray glasses gleamed in the kitchen's light as he slipped them on. Nature versus nurture is absolutely bewildering. Eric's medium brown skin was very much like mine, and no doubt his suitors, like mine, would engage in the inevitable game of playful speculation. Latino? Mediterranean? Mixed? His blue eyes, like my green, would invariably confound them. His dark hair, tousled upward into controlled chaos, reminded me of my own, at least when I had hair. And yet, he was so different in so many ways. No fear or anxiety, quick with technology, broad emotional range. He never overanalyzed. In other words, normal. A handsome and brilliant normal. Are the words I'm saying showing up on the lenses? He gave his usual "I know how to use them" groan. Then please accept the request I just sent. His left eyebrow arched to form a little dimple, his personal signature for not yet having mastered the device. That was no surprise. It had taken me months to master my first brain-computer interface. I pulled up a chair and put my index finger on his right temple. Imagine a note inside your head, then move the note to my fingertip. His expression intensified. The tips of the glasses behind your ears will detect the direction of your thoughts. Once my request lights up, hold it to select it. He blew out a relieved breath. Nice. Let's test the sound. I shared the audio of the morning's news.
The Statue of Liberty is set to reopen today as sea levels continue to recede. With the U.S. election only 15 days away,
I checked to make sure the tips made solid contact with the bony prominences behind his ears. Sound through bone conduction could be disorienting if you weren't used to it. Is the sound centered and clear? He nodded.
As Brian Medlock nears the end of his life, President Batra will celebrate his scientific and technological achievements at the White House today.
Eric's eyes widened.
The Italian Prime Minister will also join the president for tonight's
I stopped the feed. What is it? I was already sure of the topic. Brian Medlock was a towering figure in Eric's life. In everyone's life, really.
Do you think we could...
Meet Brian Medlock? His eyes went full pleading puppy dog. Not for the first time, I imagined what it might be like to brush elbows at the White House. These days, national safety, the agency for which I was deputy director, was a relic, a formality retained out of respect for its former glory as the FBI. But attending an event with Brian Medlock and foreign dignitaries? That was another level entirely. I made a mental note to try on the Italian suit I hadn't worn in years, on the chance I'd receive an invitation to something fancy. That would be something, wouldn't it? But I don't think they'd invite a mid-level worker bee to something like that. He looked down. Are you sad about Brian Medlock dying? Mortality wasn't a topic we discussed often, but Medlock's announcement that he would be ending his life within the next month or two would require it sooner than later. Eric considered it.
No, we can always surf the fabric with him when we die.
It continually amazed me. How about you do so well in your class today that even Brian Medlock would be proud?
I'll try,
He said with a shrug. No, I said in a pinched, nasally voice.
Dead. Not the Yoda do or do not thing.
I froze. Eric's ghost zipped between us again. Then I doubled down. Quiz you now, I shall. Eric groaned his displeasure. I gestured to the center of the kitchen floor. As he stood, I admired the sharpness of his dark gray slacks with his orange button-up shirt. Although with less than 2 weeks to Halloween, I couldn't help but wonder if it was too cliché. Hold on, I said in my normal voice. Always practice how you perform. Where's your jacket? Eric's little eyebrow dimple materialized again. An urgent message appeared from my director. Given that he was one of 11 candidates still standing in the presidential race, I was surprised to see his message. Although I wasn't surprised by the urgency. He could be sharing a partly cloudy weather forecast and mark it as urgent.
Jack, I hope you'll change your mind and attend the religious voter event in Miami Beach at noon. They want to chat with you about that congressional seat opening up in 78. I'd join you, but I'll be in important meetings on Capitol Hill.
I hardly needed another reminder. It would have been my first step toward running for office. The director had been more than encouraging, not because he felt I would make a good politician, but because he wanted a friendlier Congress after his imagined ascent to the throne. To be sure, the folks in Miami would have made the perfect cornerstone of my political base. I was born in Miami to a hard-working immigrant mother from Brazil. My father had been in law enforcement, and I believed in God, which was still an advantage in Florida. With the tricentennial behind us and the 2076 campaigns winding down, the event would have been the perfect time to throw my hat in the ring. I selected a bot-driven response. Thank you, Director White, for the encouragement. Knowing how unlikely I'd hear from him again that day, I put my hands on the table and air-typed the rest using my lens's gesture detection. Good luck with the campaign. Final stretch. He responded with a cartoon of a desperate hand reaching up from under a pile of donkeys and elephants. Eric's backpack floated towards us from the stairwell with his blazer hanging beneath. He's already summoning objects with his lenses? He donned the dark blue jacket with practiced nonchalance and hit his mark on the floor. He slowly pushed up one sleeve to his elbow, showcasing where its button had been removed. The missing button on the one scrunched sleeve look had been out of fashion for a couple years, but he was goading me. My lips pinched. A photon of sunlight is a thread in the fabric. I suppressed my fixation on the discombobulated sleeve.
True,
He said quickly. That wasn't my question. My question is, what path does the photon thread take? Quizzing someone wearing lenses was a rare treat, as an adult's bot would immediately supply the answer to any question of fact. Eric's bot wouldn't do that for several years, not until its AI was trained on his unique brainwave and response patterns.
the path that takes the least amount of time.
And who taught us that?
Chang,
He said with growing impatience. I glimpsed a smooth ovoid descending into our courtyard. A ray of sunrise caught the 12-foot-wide dark gray aerial just before it nestled into the shadows of the cottage behind. I checked the aerial specs. Run through your notes when you're up. It has a 360-degree screen inside. Speaking of which, I gestured with my chin toward the window. He spun to see the aerial as it opened along the gold pinstripe marking its horizontal seam. Its top lifted, and its steps hinged downward.
nice.
He said.
What's its name?
With billions upon billions of aerials, it always seemed unscalable to me, but each passenger aerial was given a unique name, and Eric had been speculating about the name of his first ride for weeks. I was grateful his guesses, the floaty floaty flim flam and the bubble butt bullet, were incorrect. The Piccolo Sioux, I said.
The Piccolo Sioux.
He repeated approvingly, then charged for the door. I put out an arm to stop him. Aren't you forgetting something? I held out both hands. Eric sighed dramatically, then took my hands and bowed his head. God, I began.
Fabric.
Eric said, opening one eye to see my reaction. God, I repeated. Thank you for this beautiful day and the bountiful opportunities you've given us. Please keep Eric safe as he takes his first, very carefully planned trip in a new and perfectly safe aerial to learn about your magnificent universe. Eric glared impatiently at me. Amen,
Amen.
he said, then bolted through the door with his backpack and me following dutifully behind. As if he were a movie stuntman, in a single continuous action, he leapt up the aerial's 3 short steps, tossed his jacket straight upward into the zero-G lid, sat into the single seat centered within the base, and buckled his lap belt. I stepped up and ducked under the lid. I gave his belt a tug, as if it were there for safety instead of just helping him stay put. Then I pushed the seat into a spin. Even with his legs fully outstretched, he still had plenty of room between his feet and the 2-inch thick shell. He began reading down the list I shared with his lenses.
Seatbelt, check. Optox, check. Backpack with lunchbox, check. Waters.
I stopped his seat, then opened a small compartment beneath it to find a single chilled water bottle. It's a short trip, I reassured myself. Check. Eric marveled at the meter-high screen inside the aerial's lid just above the opening. The screen sprang to life and a message materialized from the kaleidoscopic soup.
Welcome, Eric Woods of Ross Elementary, to your first solo aerial adventure.
Are you and Luke going to play your games along the way? I said, although I hardly needed to ask. There was never a day when Eric didn't play Magma Mania or Where's It Fit with his cousin. Eric shrugged, still staring at the display.
They're going to. That's no moon.
Oh, that's right, I said, detecting the pang of jealousy in his voice. Your class was more important, but we'll go soon, I promise. I meant it. I wanted to see the solar system's largest zero-G space park as much as he did. I bent down for a goodbye kiss on the top of his head, and Eric raised his arms in protest. Sorry, your hair. I leaned back in for a carefully placed peck on his cheek. Eric put his hand over his mouth and whispered into his lenses.
Love you.
The aerial screen flashed.
Gotta go now.
A notification popped up on my lenses. Piccolo Sioux, by Alfa Romeo. Destination, Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Estimated time of arrival, 7:58 a.m., October 19, 2076. Duration, 33 minutes. Passenger, Eric Batista Woods. Please confirm. I took a deep breath and held it. I directed my thoughts to highlight the button. Its sterile white outline pulsed slowly in and out. The path that takes the least amount of time, I thought, as I stared breathless at that pulsing button for the better part of a minute. A screen door creaked open and slammed from behind the aerial, causing me to lose my focus on the button and breathe. My mother marched out wearing a fur-trimmed pink robe with matching optox and slippers. One hand clutched the robe over her bust, the other held a small paper sack. She squinted disapprovingly at me.
I trust you wouldn't allow my grandson to leave without saying goodbye to his vovo.
She smiled broadly at Eric.
I made you Beijingos,
She said, handing him the sack.
You remember what Beijingos means?
Eric's eyes pleaded to be allowed to leave.
Kisses.
Kisses.
She exclaimed in delight, and, ignoring his protest, clutched his head by his ears and planted a big kiss on his forehead. Ears, you station tubes. I changed the settings on his trip to stay between 500 and 1,000 feet, and it recalculated his arrival as 8:21 a.m. I confirmed the trip. The aerial steps hinged inward, and its lid began to lower as Eric fixed his hair. His grandmother and I leaned sideways and waved cheerily as the opening Meriden sealed. She put her arm around mine as he began its silent ascent.
I can't believe our little bird is leaving the nest.
The aerial lifted and its Alfa Romeo emblem glinted in the morning light. Tears began to well in my eyes, illogical as that was. I felt my mother staring at me. What? She craned her neck upward and turned my face to get a closer look at my eyes.
If I didn't know better, I'd swear you're about to leak evidence of human emotion. Voters like emotion. Keep practicing. You'll get the hang of it.
As she began escorting me to her door, I glanced back to see Eric's aerial shrink and meld with 1,000 others racing overhead. Bird leaving the nest. I suddenly recalled that a barnacle goose will watch as its fledgling dives off and tumbles down a cliff face in a test of its ability to survive. A thought that was far too dramatic to be helpful. Dramatic is never helpful.